happy to have as our interviewee, our guest today, Elaine Parker. She is the president of the Job Creators Network. Elaine, welcome to the Smart Girl Politics podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about healthcare today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of health, how are things down in Orlando? Because with coronavirus, I'd like to find out what's going on in other parts of the world, because here in the Northern Virginia area where I am, it's insane. You cannot get toilet paper, water, hand sanitizer. And in my county, we're just getting our first case. So it's not like we've been overrun. Are you taking it a little bit more chill down there in the Orlando area?
We are. I live in Orange County. We've had a few cases in Florida. We have had 2 deaths as of this weekend. I know of 2 deaths in the state. There are no confirmed cases in Orange County where I live. And the schools are still functioning very normally. There are no confirmed cases. I have a daughter in high school, and there's no confirmed cases in her school, but they are implementing procedures like washing hands and hand sanitizers and things like that. It seems relatively calm here. I mean, the shelves at the grocery stores still have, bread and toilet paper and everything on. I am not sensing pandemonium here. I'm sensing calm, and, a lot of it probably has to do with our local authorities and how they have really communicated with us in a big way.
I think that makes all the difference. It's so scattered here in the DC area. There's so many different counties and cities. I think it's so decentralized that it's hard to understand. Like, there's a couple cases in DC proper, and people are like, in Virginia. So it's it's crazy here. It's kind of funny to watch in the way that, you don't want anybody to get sick or die, but it's just funny to watch the reactions, funny to see people just go bonkers at Costco. It's really, really strange. So I like to check in.
I just wish they would. Yeah, I wish that everybody would kind of put it into perspective with the flu. I mean, every single year we deal with the flu, and, tens of thousands of people die from the flu every year, but they tend to be people in those high-risk categories, older, underlying health problems.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the coronavirus. It's just as serious. I'm not discounting it, but the numbers are tremendously smaller, even worldwide, when you look at it, on what we're dealing with. And, it's still the high-risk categories. And from what I have read, it's going to be anything from feeling nothing to, flu symptoms. And as long as you take care of yourself, and if you're in a high-risk category, obviously see a doctor or potentially be hospitalized, I think we're all going to be okay. But we do need to have some calm here. I watch the news across the country, and there is some areas that just seem to be all-out pandemonium.
Yeah, and I'm definitely in one of them. So it's kind of funny to just go in just for fun, see what's on the shelf at Walgreens. Nothing. You can't get anything. It's so strange to me. I'm like, what country am I living in? But it'll be interesting to see just how things go along. If we can stay calm, if we can keep it under control. I'm not sure, just because I am in an area where it is kind of going nuts. But it's nice to know that it's not the entire nation. Most of you are sane out there. It's just a few pockets of us that seem to have just lost all sense of reality. But crazy times. Anyway, I do want to talk with you because I know that healthcare is one of the important issues that Job Creators Network takes on. But before we talk about that, could you just explain a little bit about what Job Creators Network is and what your role there is also?
Sure. The Job Creators Network is a national small business advocacy organization, and we advocate on behalf of the 30 million small business owners for lower taxes, less regulations, and pro-growth policies. And we were founded by a man named Bernie Marcus. And if you've not heard of him, you've probably heard of the organization that he started back in the 70s, because it's called the Home Depot.
Yes.
So Bernie still considers himself a small business because that's how he started out. But he's 90 now and very much out of the Home Depot. But his heart is still with small business, and that's why he founded the Job Creators Network.
Gotcha. So I know that healthcare is definitely one of your main goals right now. What are some of the other things that you do before we really delve into that?
Sure. So we obviously advocate for lower taxes. We were very, very involved in and help it across the finish line. And that was by engaging with our small business owners across the country and creating a true grassroots movement so that Washington heard from small businesses across the country that they needed tax cuts and they needed them now. And we continue to beat that drum pretty loud on what small business owners are doing with those tax cuts, because in spite of the temporary issues that we're having that are being affected by, with the coronavirus, overall, the fundamentals of our economy are very strong. And this is the best economy we've had in half a century. And it is in large part due to policies like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the deregulation under this president and his administration that we have seen consistent pro-growth policies. And so we're very much involved in having a voice in those types of policy discussions on behalf of small businesses.
So, in working with so many small business owners, were you hearing that healthcare was a concern for them? Obviously, it's a hard thing for smaller businesses to provide healthcare for their employees. Is that one of the reasons that you've been sort of pivoting towards healthcare and the just helping getting options, alternatives to Obamacare, which is, of course, the thing that has just kind of shaken our healthcare system to the core? Is it the small business owners that kind of spurred you to action in that area?
Yeah, so healthcare is a major issue for small business owners. More than 30% of small business owners since 2013 have had to drop coverage for their employees due to rising premiums. I mean, they just simply can't afford it. And we've seen premiums and deductibles skyrocket for all Americans. So we wanted to take on this issue. We knew it was going to be a big issue. We've been watching the Democratic primaries play out, and we hear anything from a Medicare for all offering or government-run health care to a public option. And just to clarify things and put it into perspective, they are one and the same. Whether it's the public option or a Medicare for all, they are headed in the same destination, and that is single payer. It's just how fast do we get there?
Gotcha. So what you all have come up with, and it sounds like this is something that is very grassroots in terms of talking to actual small business owners and just regular Americans about what they'd like to see. You are offering an option called Healthcare for You, or an initiative that you're hoping maybe getting some traction in Congress and here in DC. So Healthcare for You is what exactly?
So Healthcare for You is actually rooted in some very sophisticated market research. It's called discrete choice modeling. And what we did was we went out and did this market research involving more than 25,000 Americans. This goes much deeper than any polling or any surveys. We are talking to Republicans, Democrats, and independents to find out exactly what they want in a healthcare plan. And if you're not familiar with discrete choice modeling, it is, like I said, a very sophisticated form of market research. A lot of the major companies, major corporations use discrete choice modeling when they're developing new products. Automotive companies use it when they're trying to decide how to bundle different packages together in vehicles based on consumer choice and preference and what they prioritize as most important. So imagine how we bundle health insurance and talking to people about what they prioritize as most important. And what we got to, the research makes it very clear that Americans want personalized health care, not centralized health care like a Medicare for all or a public option would be. And so what we've done is we've developed a very broad framework for healthcare reform. It's about 7 elements that will ultimately repair and restore that patient-doctor relationship, remove politicians from healthcare decisions, and empower patients with more choice and affordability, all while still protecting pre-existing conditions. Very important issue for all Americans is that protection for pre-existing conditions.
Yes, obviously, I think it's one of those issues that came up during the Obamacare discussions that I think probably got a lot of play more than in previous discussions, at least in kind of the world I was in back then. It was the Tea Party movement. And I think, it was one of those issues that brought up to me, like, that is very important that people are able to get that, because otherwise they have no options and we're paying for it either way. So we might as well make it an option. I think that's a great one. One of the other ones that I thought was interesting in looking at what Healthcare for You was all about was lowering drug prices. This one, and it's by kicking the middleman out, between, you and getting your drugs. And this one was particularly of interest to me because I was my husband is self-employed, so I have been the carrier of our insurance. And I got let go from my job last year, and we had no insurance for a bit. So we decided to go with one of those Christian health shares. And that's a great option, but there's no pharmaceutical coverage. There's no drug coverage. So we have to go through things like GoodRx and just kind of, talk it through. We're paying up front, like what kind of deals can you cut me? And it's just fascinating to see how much cheaper you can get drugs than you thought you could. So can you talk a little bit more about that part of the Healthcare for You initiative? It just seems to me like people, if you don't ask, you don't know that it is so insanely overpriced.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. It is overpriced, and it's because right now about $250 billion a year go to middlemen, and what they're called is PBMs or pharmacy benefit managers, and that money should actually be returned to patients in the form of lower cost drugs and medical devices. And there are avenues that we can go through to attempt to do that, like repealing legislation that exempts these middlemen from penalty for violating anti-kickback laws and things like that. But you just opened up another discussion on that. There's a whole other option out there, and that's expanding, looking for other options, but expanding direct medical care. So direct primary care physicians is what a lot of people understand them to be. And these are doctors who literally have opted out of taking insurance, and they take direct payments, like a monthly membership almost. And it's like a gym membership. You'll see them anywhere from $30 to $60 a month, and it's direct primary care. And many of these doctors, this is dependent on state laws, can actually dispense drugs as well. So they literally can dispense drugs for sometimes 70 to 90% less than what you're paying in your average, at your average pharmacy, because they've taken out all the middlemen. They've taken out the insurance. They've taken out the pharmacy benefit managers. It's you and your doctor. You're making your healthcare decisions, and depending on the state you're in, some doctors can even dispense directly. And so we are advocating as part of our framework to expand that access to direct medical care and direct primary care, where you have transparency in pricing, and you have the ability to get all kinds of services at a lower price, because you have doctors and surgical places and even X-ray diagnostic places that are posting what their prices are. And I'll give you an example, because we're working with a lot of physician groups. Many of them are direct primary care physician groups. One doctor who told me that she can order a full blood panel for her patients. It costs $3 for her to send it to her lab that does not participate in insurance either, the direct medical care. If she sends it to a lab, and I won't use any of the big names, but if she sends it to a lab that goes through insurance, that same test is $100. So when you start taking out the complexity of the system and reducing that complexity, things get less expensive, because it's from me to my doctor, and my doctor back to me. That's it. There's no one else there.
I think that part is very attractive to a lot of families. And another aspect of what you all are proposing are personal health management accounts. So lowering the prices is awesome, and then helping create new and better ways for us to save for our health care is interesting as well to me, because it's, I don't have little kids anymore. So those days of having to take them to the doctor on a regular basis are gone. So to me, something like this, where it's a more catastrophic type coverage, or something that helps me save and rolls over from year to year, I want to have some of ththese options now that we're kind of moving into a different phase of life. And I think a lot of Americans, and I know a lot of listeners of the Smart Girl Politics podcast are kind of in the same boat. So what is it all that you are proposing in terms of these kinds of savings accounts?
So the personal health management accounts, or as many people know them, health savings accounts, will really give patients more control over their own healthcare dollars. And that's very important. It'll allow patients, by expanding the maximum contributions to them. Many people may not know this, but they were severely limited under Obamacare. But by expanding the maximum contribution, we can actually allow employers to opt out of being in the insurance business and just fund an HSA for their employees. So their employees are then in control of their own healthcare dollars and can use those healthcare dollars to purchase health insurance and pay the premiums out of them. Now, what that does is it allows employees to own their own health insurance, just like they own their own car insurance and just like they own their own life insurance. And then they take it with them from job to job, which goes a long way to dealing with pre-existing conditions because you never have a lapse in coverage.
I mean, as someone who just lost their health insurance last year, that is so very attractive because when you get smacked with, well, you can have Cobra, yeah, okay, how in the world am I going to afford Cobra? Like, this is insane.
No.
So to be able to take it with me would have been a real blessing to our family. Although there are some options out there now, and it seems like now that we have Trump in office, it seems like he's been kind of rolling back a few of the things that made Obamacare so onerous. It's still onerous, but some of the things, and I know that I don't know how up to date you are on some of the executive orders, but I know that he's been kind of peeling back a little bit of it. Have you been kind of keeping your eye on that?
Yeah, he's been very active on association healthcare plans, although they're tied up in the courts right now. But that would be a game changer for small business as well. They're tied up in the courts because a bunch of Democratic AGs felt that the AHPs violated regulations found in Obamacare, and therefore they're fighting them. So really, they're fighting small business being able to offer health insurance to their employees. It really makes no sense to me at all. But he's done AHPs, he's done HRAs. He's looking for ways to get around Obamacare so that small businesses can provide insurance, so that people can save for their own health insurance in some ways, and to help it make it more affordable. He's made it easier to do telemedicine with Medicare, folks who are on Medicare. He's opened that up. I mean, right now with the coronavirus, telemedicine, very important. Yeah. You would much rather be Skyping with your doctor than going into a doctor's office where you're potentially going to be exposed to other sick people. So telemedicine is a great option for people, even just for time constraints. I mean, sometimes it's just that minor where if you could just call and have a conversation and say, here's what's happening. What do you think? Is it something that I need to be seen for? Many times it could be handled right over the phone.
Yeah, I love it. I love innovation. I love options. And I know there's millions of American families that feel the same way. We've delved a little bit into the political part of it now. So where is healthcare for you in terms of getting support in Congress, or maybe the president, the White House? Like, are people, are congressmen, congresswomen, are elected officials open to this idea? Are you gaining some traction there?
We are. We have gained a lot of traction. We have the support of former Speaker Newt Gingrich, Dr. Tom Price, who's the former Secretary in Health and Human Services, Dr. John Goodman, who is the president and CEO of the Goodman Institute, and he is the grandfather of HSAs. So we're excited about some of the influencer support that we've received. We've also built a coalition of physician groups across the country who are supporting the framework. And we also have shared the information at the state level with insurance commissioners, attorneys general, and governors. We've also shared the information with leadership in the Senate as well as folks in the White House. And our hope and our vision is that the Republican leadership the Republican-led Senate will take up legislation in one form or another later this summer, because this is a framework that can work for all Americans. And it's very simple. We've spent just 10 minutes talking about it. Right. And, it's very simple to understand. This is not complex. But, when you think about, do you want a government-run system that's, top-down, bureaucratic, very expensive, with no choice? Or do you want healthcare for you that's personalized, that puts you in charge of not only your healthcare decisions, but your healthcare dollars?
Absolutely. I'm excited by it. When I was reading about it, I was like, this is really cool. And I hope that it does get more support, because my group, Smart Girl Politics, was very heavily into activism during the Tea Party days. So Obamacare was obviously the issue, really. I mean, there were other things, but one of the main issues, one of the things that we were fighting against. And I know that there has been frustration amongst just everyday Americans, conservatives, that Republicans haven't done anything, that they haven't Really, I know that there's, with a few exceptions, there haven't been that many alternative plans or ways of kind of taking off some of the burdens of Obamacare that haven't come through or haven't really gotten a lot of play. Obviously, the media is not going to play up something like this that is very common sense and pro-family. So we know that that's the reason that we don't know about it. But it does. I know that there has been frustration among just the grassroots that Republicans haven't done more to kind of take Obamacare away, burn it down, do something. So I mean, I'm very excited. I don't know what it is. I mean, I know burning it down at this point may be a little bit difficult, but I'm saying we could try. But it is nice to know that there are some alternatives out there, some really common sense things that really just are what families need to thrive and survive. So what can people do if our listeners want to keep track of this hopefully future legislation that's going to go through the Senate, or just in general what you're doing at Job Creators Network and what you're doing with Healthcare for You? What's the best way for them to keep track of that or even get involved?
Sure, that'd be great. If your listeners want to go to healthcareforyou.com, we do have an action center there. If they want to join the coalition, they can do that. They can send us an email. There's also a petition on there that they can sign, which will go right to their representatives in Washington, telling their representatives that they want health care for you and that their representatives should take up legislation. So there's a lot of opportunities. If they're a small business owner and they want to join Job Creators Network, they can simply go to joinjcn.com. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of good ideas to fight for small business and the 30 million small business owners that are out there, because they are generating 2/3 of all new job growth.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for being out there. Thank you for doing this. This is exciting to me as someone that did go through those Tea Party years of fighting against Obamacare and waiting around for something to come around that was going to make more sense. This is just complete common sense and pretty exciting because it just feeds into the things that would work well for my family and I know other families. So that's wonderful. Elaine, if people want to just keep up with you, I know that you do lots of appearances. You're all over the place. So if they want to keep up with you and see what's going on with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on Twitter at Elaine_Parker. So that is the best way to keep up with what's happening with me. I am always posting and tweeting out from there. So they're welcome to follow me on Twitter.
That's wonderful. So go ahead and do that, listeners. Elaine Parker, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing what happens with Healthcare for You. Thank you.